I've got 3 shim washers here in front of me. I'm just going to use one of the ones that came out of the door because it's twice the thickness. There were 3 washers under there originally. This washer is the thickness of 2 of those washers, and I suspect that this will be just about the right amount. I would be very surprised if we need the thickness of 3 washers. I'll do that up. Let's see how we go. That moves smoothly. There's no problem there at all. So that's ideal. We can do this screw up. That's the post for the film release button. The shutter release shaft is here, is trying to get away. Just put that rubber band back in place there. That'll do nicely. It's just holding that down, is it? Yeah, it is. That's better. So the strap plug at this end, that holds down the rack at this end too. That's got to go in place. 2 screws for that. And that one. Let's check the action again. Now that shutter release is just being held down by that rubber band there. It's just that action's nice and smooth. I'm just looking at the engagement of the teeth here to see if there's too much play. It's a little bit loose, a bit looser than I'd like. I'm going to deal with that. It's alright to have a bit of backlash there, but you don't want too much. So, just slacken that screws up there and there. Swing that chrome trim out the way. I want to get at this screw and its mate over here. Push that whole shaft and bush across as far as I can and tighten those 2 screws up. And that will have the effect of taking any play out of that rack. It's quite surprising how much difference that can make. Let's strap plug back down again. Yeah, I like the engagement of the teeth there a lot better. That's good. What stage are we at? Let's get that plastic band back on there. And I think the front door can go on the camera. So I'm just checking to make sure that there's no obvious terrible distortion there. That all looks okay. Grease in that slot there, some grease in that slot there. There's some few odd marks on this camera. Not clear how you'd go about getting those. Now, washers for this door. Now we've already used one of them up, and our hinge pin screws. I'm going to find another washer because I'm fairly confident we need more than that. I think we need a thicker one. Alright, I was able to find washers. Now, I think I need that pair at the top. always a bit tricky to get these things lined up. If you decide you're going to use 2 washers on one end and 1 washer on the other, it's always easier to get the 2 washers in first rather than be trying to get the 2 washers in last, because they might be a bit snug and it might be a bit hard to get them in position. In this case I've got 2 washers on both ends, so I don't have any choice. I'll do those screws up tight because they were not tight when I started. Right, so let's see if the front of the camera opens and closes normally. It does, and the button here pops up nicely too, no hesitation. That's all good. Well, I think that I'll put the shutter on the camera now because that can go. Let's just remove its retaining ring. Drop that into position. I'll rack the focus to the close focus position. Now I know that my curved rack here is not in the right position. I'll swing it out to roughly where I know it'll be in the right position. And that didn't quite cock the shutter, I could tell, so I need to come around at least another tooth, probably 2. Let's try that again. I'm listening to hear the shutter cock. Yeah, it did, but it only at the last second there. I think I want another tooth there. I want the shutter to cock just before the film advance action reaches the end, if I possibly can. That's better. That's good. Right, I need to get my retaining ring in place and do it up. Which means I need the tool. Bring it down. Snug it up. Check that the shutter cocks and fires. It does. That is holding down because of the tension on there. That's moving smoothly. That's good. Okay. What about the focus? Yeah, focus is nice and smooth. Sometimes when you tighten the shutter up, the focus might go stiff. Typically it's because the shutter is slightly off centre and it's rubbing against the inside of the focus scale ring. And typically the answer there is to decide which way it's pushing against it, and you get your thumbs and force it and just press it away. There's always a little bit of movement or potential movement there, and that sorts that out. Oh, that's good. I think at this stage I will put the rangefinder on the camera, since that's ready to go on. I'm sort of working against the clock here today because I've got other tasks that need to be done. I'll put a little bit of molybdenum paste on there, and I will put a couple of spots of lacquer. Normally I would use red, but I've just run out. So I put a couple of spots of lacquer there so that the rangefinder is fixed quite firmly to the top cover, top plate. Because otherwise there are 2 screws that hold it down, but they hold it down but they don't locate it. It's not doweled into position or anything. we want it to stay exactly where it was left. And a couple of spots of lacquer does that job very well indeed, and it means that the rangefinder is in no danger of accidentally shifting should the camera receive a shock. And you can tell cameras regularly receive shocks because you only have to look around the outside of them and you can see any number of dings and dents. Right, I'm just checking my rangefinder looking out the window. Now my moving image is slightly low, so I know I've got to adjust my vertical alignment slightly. And it's quite normal for the vertical alignment to need adjusting when you fit the rangefinder to the camera. And actually it's spot on. My horizontal alignment is absolutely right. So I don't need to do any more to that rangefinder, that's just perfect. It's always deeply suspicious when things are perfect. It means that everything went back where it originally came from, probably. So, the film release button, the shutter release button. I'm going to put a couple of dots of lacquer on that screw at the top there to stop that from moving away. And typically I do that by putting the lacquer on a toothpick. So I can put just a dot where I want and no more. I'm going to check the adjustment of the shutter release to make sure that that's correct. You want the shutter to release at the instant the film advance is released. So I'm just checking the action of that. I can tell instantly that that is sitting too high. So we're going to run that down another notch, I'd say. Get this film release button back in place. Yeah, something's not, is most certainly not moving correctly. What's happening here? That shutter release is really sluggish coming back up. I wonder if it's a bit... I'm just going to put a wipe of molybdenum on that. Maybe a bit of friction here somewhere. That seems fine. There's our film release button again. The angle of this looks a little bit odd. It looks like it's pressing down too far to me. We shall see. Yeah, something's pressing down. And it is the film release lever. it's pressing down here, it's pressing down on the top of the release lever, because it's only releasing the film release at exactly the same point the shutter's going, so it's in the correct position. But this is pressing down too far. It just means that someone's adjusted it and they have probably overdone it. It doesn't need to be bent down that far. Let's just flatten that out a bit and try that. If it's pressing down, basically it stops the film release lever from rising far enough to allow the shutter to cock completely. That was it. Now I'm just looking at the position of the frame counter, and it's advancing beyond the line. So I'll see if I need to back that off. It's a bit reluctant to move. That's good. Right, 2 screws in the top cover, chrome plated. They are somewhat mutilated. Certainly they have had a hard life. That's interesting. That means that someone's had a go at repairing this and they were not using good tools, or they were not using good techniques. And probably both. Just check the action again. Shutter's good. Release pops up nicely. Check the action of the film release button. That works, and it pops up nicely too. No problem there at all. The film rewind, that can go on. At the base of the camera, the leatherette. Just take that advanced lever off. Here is my leatherette. Let's get this in place. Now I've got a bit of adhesive come onto the top surface here, and I want to get that off there because sometimes it melts the leatherette. I think we'll get away with that. Just making sure that leatherette is pressed down firmly. Just lift that stray adhesive off there. That's better. Film Advance lever back on. Why is that not picking up? That's better. Now we're in business. Something's not right, it's not seating properly. No, it's not pulling onto the end of the shaft correctly. Why is that? That's better. It's third screw. That's good. That's all as it should be. Now I want to get this back catch release cover in place. I'll check that it's all clean. And this is often a bit of a fight to get on. We'll see how we go today. And the fight is this: you've got to get this all assembled together. By putting a screw through there, fitting the spring in position, and you're relying on the spring tension to hold itself in position while you lift this onto the body. Like that. That worked. There's the last screw. That's good. So, there remains only to put the leatherette patch on the Film Advance lever. And I've got that all cleaned up and ready to go. This had even more layers of adhesive on it than the base leatherette, which I suppose is not particularly surprising. I heard a noise then. I hope that was just the camera deciding it was shifting its point of focus and not going to sleep. Right, well, apart from a final wipe over, that camera's done, and that can go back to its owner. You'll see that there's no bumps on the back anymore. On the front, yes, we've still got bumps. They're somewhat reduced from what they were, but they're still present. Of course, the lumps and bumps on the door, I can't really do much about that. That's They're terrible things to try and deal with, anything to do with that. And it's because the leatherette on the rest of the body is all in one plane. Here, because of the shape of it, the leatherette pulls in various directions at once. So trying to get a scalpel underneath there to lift it without damaging it is exceptionally hard. It's practical purposes, it's impossible. You can achieve it occasionally under very ideal circumstances. Strangely enough, the ideal circumstances are when there's so much corrosion that all the adhesive is effectively let go. But that's not the case here. So this camera now is all done. It's a nice example of the Kodak Retina IIc with the Xenon f2.8 lens, and I'm sure the owner would be very pleased to see this back. I know in this case it was a camera that belonged to a family member, and it's always nice to have something that's been passed down from family. Thanks for watching.